Imagine descending into the deep, surrounded by darkness, water pressure rising with every meter. Now imagine being sucked into a narrow pipeline hundreds of feet beneath the ocean's surface, trapped, unable to turn around, unable to scream, unable to escape. This is not fiction. This is the real chilling story of the Paria fuel trading diving disaster, a catastrophe that unfolded beneath the waters of Trinidad in 2022. 5 divers entered the pipeline. Only 1 returned. If you're fascinated by real-life survival, shocking engineering failures, and the raw power of human courage and corporate negligence, you need to watch this till the end. Subscribe to Infinity for more mind-blowing real-world stories. Now let's dive in. It started like any ordinary day for divers Christopher Boudram, Kazim Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Rishi Nagasar, and Faisal Kurban. They were seasoned professionals, contracted by LMCS to perform maintenance at a sea line riser, part of the Paria Fuel Trading Company's oil infrastructure off the coast of Pointe-à-Pierre, Trinidad. The job was supposed to involve basic cleaning and inspection. These men were familiar with this system, a 30-inch diameter pipe that snaked beneath the ocean floor, connecting 2 offshore oil platforms. But something was different this time. The divers were lowered into a hyperbaric chamber on a floating barge, a pressurized diving bell that would help them acclimate to the intense underwater pressure. Their task: enter the pipeline, clean it using hand tools, and exit the way they came in. Time in the pipe was to be minimal, 15 minutes max inside the confined space. The pipe, though intimidating, had been inspected and declared safe, but beneath the waves, unnoticed by the team above, danger was quietly building. As the divers descended into the riser, the sea was calm. Communication remained clear. There was no sign of what was to come. Then, in a moment no one expected, a sudden vacuum effect occurred. A reverse pressure surge pulled the men inward, not one by one, all at once. A silent, violent suction dragged them deep into the pipe like marbles in a straw. The crew topside saw bubbles and tools floating. Something was wrong, but no one quite knew what, yet. What followed was a nightmare scenario few could survive, and only one man would. Within seconds, 4 of the 5 divers had vanished. Christopher Boudram, the only survivor, later described it as feeling like being pulled into hell. The pipe suction came from air pockets and water displacement caused by a miscalculation or equipment malfunction, still under investigation. Boudram, at the edge of the pipe, was the last to be sucked in. He tumbled, disoriented, inside the pitch-black tube, crashing into walls, limbs twisted, heart racing. Inside the pipe, chaos reigned. The diameter was tight, just wide enough to crawl through. The men, in full gear, were now trapped hundreds of feet deep, unable to turn or communicate. Their oxygen was limited. Their depth exceeded 60 feet underwater. They had to stay calm, but panic began to rise. Boudram eventually reached the others, piled in near a junction inside the pipe. One man was already unconscious. They tried to conserve air, using signs and taps to communicate, but they knew time was not on their side. Above water, Paria's emergency response was painfully slow. Divers pleaded for immediate rescue action, but they were told to wait for authorization. Meanwhile, every breath below counted. The men were trapped in silence, in darkness, in an underwater grave slowly filling with despair. For 3 hours they waited, then 6, then 12. No rescue, no hope, no light. Christopher Boudram knew he had only one option: go back, crawl, in reverse, through a pipe barely big enough for his body. It was pitch black. His hands bled as he scraped along sharp metal edges. The water around him grew colder. Boudram's air was running out. His dive computer screamed warnings, but he pushed on, fueled by raw will to survive. Inch by inch he made progress. He had no way of knowing how far he'd come or how much was left, but he kept moving. At one point his gear snagged. He had to choose, ditch it or die. He let go of his tank and regulator, holding only a small emergency tank to breathe. Eventually he saw a glimmer of light, the pipe's entrance. He kicked, clawed, and collapsed into the arms of the horrified crew. Drenched in oil, blood, and salt water, he gasped for air. "There are others alive inside!" he shouted. The crew above celebrated his return, but Boudrum's focus was only on saving his brothers still trapped inside. He begged the company to send another diver with him, but Paria refused. The clock kept ticking. "We could have saved them," he would later say. "They were alive when I left." But red tape killed faster than the ocean ever could. Boudrum's escape should have triggered an immediate rescue mission, but it didn't. Bureaucracy paralyzed the response. Paria claimed they had to ensure no further loss of life. Meanwhile, 4 men were slowly suffocating beneath the waves. LMCS volunteers divers who knew the system offered to go in. They were denied access. The Coast Guard arrived. They assessed. They discussed. They waited. They discussed. They waited. Every hour, oxygen levels dropped, temperatures fell, hope faded. Eventually, a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, was sent down. IT located bodies, still in place, still tangled. By the time any real action occurred, it was too late. All 4 divers had died, trapped, scared, and abandoned. The public exploded with outrage. Families demanded answers. How could this happen in 2022? Investigations followed, lawsuits, accusations of corporate manslaughter. Still, no one was held accountable. It wasn't just a diving disaster, it was a failure of systems, safety, and soul. In the days that followed, the families of the victims were left with grief and haunting last messages. One diver, Rishi Nagasar, managed to record a voice note to his wife. "I tried everything. I love you." These messages turned the tragedy from headlines into heartbreak. Christopher Boudrum became a reluctant hero. He carried survivors' guilt, but also the truth. He told the world they were alive, and no one helped them. Divers across the globe rallied behind him, demanding reform in commercial diving safety standards. Paria Fuel remained silent. LMCS issued statements, but trust was shattered. Trinidad's government faced tough questions. Who approved the dive? Who delayed the rescue? Who will pay? The answers remain murky, like the waters that swallowed 4 innocent men. Long after the rescue was called off, the pipeline remained still, silent except for the swirling memories left behind. It wasn't just a piece of metal anymore. It had become a tomb, holding the echoes of 4 lives lost too soon. Christopher Boudrum's survival wasn't just a fluke. It was a brutal testament to human will. But even as he walked free, part of him remained buried in that pipeline with his brothers. He gave interview after interview, not for fame, but for truth. "They were alive when I left," he repeated over and over. "We could have saved them." The pain was visible in his eyes, in his trembling voice, in the weight he now carried. For the families, every passing day without justice was a fresh wound. Rishi Nagasar's voice note still echoes online, his calm goodbye defying the terror he must have felt. It plays like a haunting lullaby for a life interrupted. Faisal Kurban, Yusuf Henry, and Kazim Ali Jr., their stories became symbols. Their names whispered in diver forums, safety briefings, and candlelight vigils across the Caribbean. A full public inquiry was finally launched in 2023. Harsh questions were raised. Why weren't emergency protocols followed? Why was the survivor's plea ignored? Why did no one act? The inquiry revealed shocking gaps in safety oversight and crisis response. But even so, no one has truly paid the price. No corporate heads rolled, no prison time, just headlines and silence. Divers around the world watched in disbelief. They knew. It could have been them. The Paria tragedy wasn't just a local disaster. It was a global wake-up call. Since then, some minor reforms have been suggested, but nothing substantial has truly changed. In many ways, the system remains just as vulnerable. The question now isn't what happened, but when will it happen again? In the deep, cold water off Trinidad's coast, the pipeline lies sealed, but the truth? It still seeps through the cracks, and the world is still listening, and the world is still listening. Some stories stick with you not because of their horror, but because of their humanity. This is one of those stories. 5 men went down, only 1 came back, and the world above? It hesitated when it should have moved. The Paria diving disaster isn't just about oil or pipelines. It's about fathers who never came home, about safety systems that failed, about a voice note whispered into the void. It's about how fragile life becomes when bureaucracy outruns compassion. These divers weren't thrill seekers. They were workers, sons, husbands, friends. They showed up to do their jobs, and the system they trusted abandoned them. Christopher Boudrum, the lone survivor, now lives with a mission to make sure their lives weren't lost in vain. He's still speaking out, still pushing for justice, still haunted by that dark pipe under the sea. If this story moved you, it's because it matters. It reminds us all that behind every headline is a heartbeat. Behind every delay is a decision that costs lives. These men deserve more than silence. They deserve remembrance, reform, respect. At Infinity, we believe stories like this must be told, not just to honor the dead, but to protect the living. So if you care about truth, if you care about justice, if you believe these lives should never be reduced to a forgotten incident on a spreadsheet, then hit that subscribe button. Share this story. Comment below with your thoughts. Let their names echo louder than the silence that followed their cries for help. Because sometimes remembering is resistance, and telling the truth, it's the first step to never letting it happen again.